Hey folks, I thought we'd have more time to talk about Stonewall, and we will, but right now we have to talk about something else. The infiltration of public arts and history funding. Hey, I'm Tad Sturmer. I teach public history at Johns Hopkins. I'm the film and digital media editor of the Public Historian Journal, and I'm a member of both the International Documentary Association and the Documentary Producers Alliance. The National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, announced last week, about the same time as the Kennedy Center takeover, that all future grants must align with America 250, which is functionally the 1776 Commission and Task Force 250. Sorry, I had to reach for this to make sure that it passed all the censors. Specifically, all NEA projects should now celebrate the nation's rich artistic heritage and creativity by honoring the sesquicentennial, got that out, of the United States of America. And they're forcing everyone back to square one. Unless, of course, your work already fits their version of history, then I'm sure the application process will just go fine. And the chairs, or maybe we should say future chairs, of both the NEA and the NEH now sit on Task Force 250, created to essentially enforce the 1776 Commission vision of American history and the 250th anniversary of the United States. So let's be absolutely clear about what's happening. This is not a funding shift. It's a top-down ideological takeover of the arts and humanities. And something you might miss, they've added a loyalty test, a 5-year production history requirement. Okay, now, every grant application requires a production history. We know this, right? And because I've reviewed and applied for NEH media project proposals, this is kind of a normal thing to make sure that whoever you're giving money to can in fact complete the project that they're proposing. But this isn't about approving that you can complete a project. This is about ideological vetting. They don't want Trojan horses. They don't want artists or public historians who have spent years telling uncomfortable truths, slipping under the radar, and making something radical. They want proof that you've already been playing by their rules. Which means if your work in the past 5 years hasn't already fit the nationalist mold, you're out. Although I'm sure Ken Burns will surprisingly be just fine. Yeah, that's him with Clarence Thomas and one of the Koch brothers. This is not about celebrating American creativity. This is about enforcing a singular, sanitized, nationalist version of that history. The 1776 Commission report explicitly calls for a restoration of education to ensure all public history projects reflect patriotic themes, and the executive order published just a couple of weeks ago called for patriotic education. That means eliminating funding for work that confronts the realities of slavery, indigenous dispossession, systemic racism, any kind of oppression, and any kind of framing that puts the patriots in a negative light. And so that means if you spent the last 5 years, at any time in the last 5 years, making projects that actually reflect history as it happened, not as the nationalists want it retconned, good luck getting a grant now. And be skeptical of the projects that do get funded. If a new NEA or NEH-backed documentary, exhibition, or museum gets the green light, gets to distribution, we need to ask actually now, why? Does it erase or downplay oppression? Does it sideline or tokenize marginalized voices just to kind of serve the white nationalist story? Does it conveniently skip over the realities of slavery, colonization, systemic inequality? Do the arguments that the Patriots were complicated men of their time get a turbo boost? And are the same old institutions the ones that have been pushing patriotic myth-making, like, say, I don't know, Mount Vernon or Dinesh D'Souza, suddenly receive major federal grants? Is the age of moral relativism back in a major way? They were complicated. They could exploit, but they did great things in the end. This is how authoritarian nationalism gets enforced, not just through laws, but through stories, and controlling who gets to tell them. And I guarantee you the NEH is going to be next, because if they can control the arts, they can control history. And they are already doing it with the National Park Service. Again, Stonewall, and that's just step one. And if they control history, they control how the next generation understands or misunderstands this country. So, here's what we do. If you're a filmmaker, a public historian, an artist, Now is the time to lean into independent organization, because failing institutions and compromised agencies aren't going to protect you. There is no way to pivot or frame. They will catch you, depending upon what you've done over the last 5 years. Groups like the International Documentary Association and platforms like Seed and Spark are going to be crucial. Go check out Seed and Spark. We need to build and reinforce alternative funding streams that are not tied to nationalist control. We have to support the filmmakers and public historians who are going to be locked out of federal grants, not because their work isn't strong enough, but because it tells the truth. So, support independent artists and historians who are already doing the work that they want to erase. Boost them, share them. Donate to that cup of coffee on their Patreon or GoFundMe. Hold institutions accountable. Demand transparency in funding. Know who's getting what. And if you're in film and media, lean into independent funding sources, because we cannot rely on the NEA or NEH anymore. And if you're in public history, media, or the arts, keep making the work they want to silence. As Jean-Luc Godard said, if you have $1, spend that, make a film worth $1. Because they can rewrite the grant guidelines, but they can't erase history. And these platforms still exist for you to go ahead and get your message out. They don't just want to control history. They want to control who gets to tell it. And we're not going to let them, are we?